Back again. Today, I want to talk about something that I left off of last video a little bit, and that's the silence, sitting in silence. I have struggled with sitting in silence as of late, and today in the book I'm reading, that's actually what the chapter was about. And some of it applied to me, some of it didn't. It talked about a story of a woman who spent her silent time praying, which I do, and things like the Jesus prayer, repetitive, and many others, and it helps so much. But it's sometimes almost covering up, like putting a shield to something else that's there. And in the book, a priest tells her to observe the silence, right? Jesse Lee Peterson kind of talks about this, his version of the silent prayer. All very similar. Not the exact same, but very similar. And I don't know, I'm at a stage in my life where even a few months ago, coming out of depression, like, this wasn't the case. I was able to focus in the silence, or almost like my imagination would take, or the flow state, if you will. And it was good, it was positive, or at least it seemed like it. Could have been a deception for all I know, right? And sometimes I think it's both. But lately it's like either two things. Either in silence, I've got just a constant dialogue, and that can just float away with imagination. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And to be honest, it is a lot of times a defensive rehearsal, right? It'll be me, maybe a scenario in the past, future, and sometimes it's like repentance. Like I did something bad and I'm almost, repenting for it and observing, and that seems good, right? But it takes off into a scenario, and then my imagination, and it's just like, how did I get here? And it happens in such a short time. It'll literally be that scenario, and let's say 40 seconds earlier, I was like, I'm gonna sit in silence. And that's what happens in 40 seconds, right? It's absolutely wild. And to side tangent from that a little bit, in the last almost decade, Jesse Lee Peterson's silent prayer that he does, where he talks for, 12, 13 minutes, and kind of, it's almost like a guided silence, very much in the present and observation. And I've done that a lot, and that helps a lot. And that, or I'll say a version of that, is something I think will be beneficial for me. I think his dialogue is pretty harsh. It kind of takes away from the silence sometimes. just the specific words he says. But overall, I think it's a good practice, and I've listened to it, I can say, over 100 times. So I know the process. Maybe I can just do it my own without his dialogue. But yeah, the silence right now is struggling. So I said the one half is when I go into the defensive rehearsal, and the other half, which a lot of times I'll cover up with like the Jesus prayer or certain parts of liturgy, certain prayers. The other part of silence is like an attack. Depression, it is a spiral, a tornado, and it's fast and it's heavy, and it's like, man, I just wanted to relax for like 5 minutes, and by minute 4 I am like questioning it's bad, right? So third time I'm doing 75 hard now. On day 4, I finished it the second time, this past October, so 3 months ago. A little more. Yeah, something like that. And my mindset was really good. It was really, really good. The first time I did 75 hard 5 years ago was really, really good. Life circumstances were totally different. And it's just so odd. This third time around is, again, not the same. It's not. It's a very repetitive process, but mentally, I'm already experiencing something totally different, right? And not in a way I'd expect. Because especially the last 2 times I've done 75 hard, the silence is kind of like where I'm in a flow state, and ideas and creativity, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Whereas this time the silence is like going to war. And my vices are so much more limited than they were the last time I was doing 75 hard, and the time before that 5 years ago. Far from a saint, but overall, I live a fairly wholesome life, right? I have a lot that I can complain about, but something that I've learned, especially through the Brotherhood and the Orthodox Church, is watchfulness. And to simplify it, imagine being at a certain part in the day, anytime, and there's anxiety and there's stress. Basically watch and observe the situation in that moment, and simplify it. There's basically going to be 2 options in that moment. An option of good, a choice of righteousness, or generally an option of the flesh, of sin. And that's generally what the present moment is day to day. And so a point of anxiety, a point of stress, stop, observe, watch. What is clearly the right thing to do right now? Don't overthink it, and just do it, right? And that simple process is what helps me so much more now than, say, any time in the past. And the irony is, leading a cleaner life, a sober life, a quiet life, again, I'm completely a sinner. I have removed a lot of sins from my life. And removing a lot of sins from my life has honestly opened up to sins that aren't necessarily a direct action, but almost sins of character, things like ego and pride, and so many tangents from that, as opposed to, I did this thing that was bad, right? And so I've removed so many of those. This is a bad thing to do. This is a sin. I'm not going to do that. And a moment of rest, being like, I'm not doing these sinful things. Look at me, right? And now it's getting deeper into understanding who I am, the flesh, the motivation of so many things that I do unknowingly, unique versions of arrogance, right? When you think of an arrogant person, I think it's pretty easy to think of like the bro Chad, right? A cocky person, if you will. And there's so many variations of it, a lot of which has come to light about myself. And just seeking humbleness, humility, that's a big phase in my life going forward. I plan on the next 3 years waiting tables. I haven't had to wait tables in eight years plus, at least 8 years. And so that's a very humbling thing, right? Now there's a plan behind it. I'm not just waiting tables because I don't know what else to do. I'll be going back to school, engineering degree, and I will just have to own that dreaded question when you meet someone you haven't talked to in a long time, or meeting for the first time. So what do you do for work, right? Which, by the way, majority of my life, I have not had a job, career, etc. that I've been excited to tell others about. So definitely a question you won't find me asking somebody unless they're kind of hinting at it, right? For example, I asked someone that this last weekend, but he had already brought up his work and work-life balance and things, so it was organic, right? And he's an engineer, right? We got along. Who would have thought? So, yeah, the deeper depths of sin, the silence exposing the layers of an onion, right? And I mean, again, 3 months ago, I was so on top of the world. Things were going right, in flow state, and got this new career that seemed so promising but wasn't, and lessons learned there. Again, and that surrounded by godlessness and ego and love of money and just the list goes on. And so pulling myself out of it was such a reset on my soul to go back to where I was before, again, just 3-4 months ago. But again, with new lessons learned. And yeah, I mean, it destroyed my inner peace, right? Like, just, it destroyed my inner peace. And every day for the beginning was like such a fight of maintaining my peace, saying the Jesus prayer, praying, have my prayer book with me, and trying to compete over this just sinless corporation. Sinful corporation, godless. But again, I'm not to judge, right? Just, for lack of better words, trying to describe the situation. And at a certain point, I just left, had to leave. And yeah, humility, watchfulness, silence. Easier said than done, right? It's a constant thing. It's a constant thing. And one thing I didn't see coming was removing all of these vices from my life just to be hit over the head like a hammer with the deeper sins of nuance, the ego, the pride, the judgment. And it was a very, very interesting game, this game of life. And with that, I'll sign off. Till tomorrow. Bye.